While everyone stood frozen on the busy street, a 16-year-old boy in a worn school uniform knelt beside the fallen millionaire to help him breathe. But the moment that changed both their lives wasn't when he saved the man. It was what happened next that left an entire community speechless.
The small lamp on Alex's desk cast a soft glow across his modest room. He sat quietly, his thin frame bent over an old notebook as evening settled outside his window. At 16, Alex was tall and lean, with watchful eyes that held both curiosity and determination. His worn but clean school uniform spoke of care, despite limited means. The wooden desk creaked slightly as he shifted, its surface marked by years of use. Textbooks lay arranged neatly beside his notebook, their covers faded but protected by careful handling. Alex paused in his writing, looking up at the family photos on the wall. They hung in simple frames, showing moments of joy captured between him and his mother, picnics in the park, his first day of school, small celebrations that meant everything. "Need to keep studying," he whispered to himself, returning to his work. His fingers traced the lined pages where he had written his daily goals. The room might be small, but Alex kept it tidy. Each book had its place, each pen stood ready for use, reflecting his organized nature. Light from passing cars occasionally swept across the walls, reminding him of the busy neighborhood outside. The sounds of the working-class community drifted through his window. Children playing in the streets, vendors calling out their wares, the steady hum of city life. Yet in his room, Alex created his own quiet world of learning and dreams. His school shirt showed careful mending where it had worn thin at the elbows. Alex smoothed it absently, a habit born of pride and self-reliance. The gesture revealed both his awareness of their financial limitations and his determination to make the best of what he had. His dark eyes moved between his books and the family photos, drawing strength from both knowledge and love. "Just a little more," he encouraged himself, picking up his pen again. The light from his desk lamp seemed to grow warmer, embracing his small space like a gentle friend, supporting his evening of quiet study and determination. Alex reached for his old notebook, running his fingers over the worn cover. The words, "Small actions, big changes," were written carefully across the front, the letters slightly faded but still clear. He had chosen these words carefully, believing in their power to guide him forward. Opening the notebook, he turned each page with gentle care. His neat handwriting filled the lines with notes from classes, thoughts about helping others, and dreams for the future. Some pages showed signs of frequent reading, their corners softly curled from many evenings of review. "Always writing in that special notebook of yours," a warm voice said from the doorway. Alex looked up to see his mother standing there. At 42, she carried herself with quiet grace, her small frame holding years of hard work and dedication. Her face showed gentle wrinkles around her eyes, marks of both worry and laughter. She wore simple clothes, neat and clean, like everything else about her. "I brought you some milk," she said, stepping into the room. Her movements were careful as she placed the glass on his desk, making sure not to disturb his arranged papers. The smell of warm milk filled the small space, bringing comfort with it. "Thanks, Mom." Alex smiled, then turned back to his notes with a slight frown. "I just need to understand these problems better." His mother watched him with understanding eyes. "You've been studying since you came home from school," she said gently. "Maybe it's time for a break." Alex sighed, his shoulders dropping slightly. "I want to do better," he admitted, looking up at her. "Some subjects just seem so hard, no matter how much I study." She placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. Her touch carried years of encouragement and support. "Learning takes time," she reminded him softly. "You don't have to master everything at once." The evening light played across their faces as they shared this quiet moment. In his mother's presence, Alex felt both his determination and his doubts. knowing she understood both. As his mother left the room, Alex watched her small figure move carefully through the doorway. Her steps were slower than they used to be, weighted by long hours at work. The slight bend in her shoulders told stories of countless days spent caring for patients, only to come home and care for him too. Her hair showed touches of gray that hadn't been there last year, marking time's quiet passage. Alex turned back to his studies, but his mind lingered on his mother's daily routine. She would wake before dawn, prepare their simple breakfast, and head to the clinic where she worked long hours. Sometimes she took extra shifts when they needed more money, yet she never complained, always finding energy to ask about his day or help with his homework. Morning came too quickly, bringing with it the sounds of their neighborhood awakening. Alex stepped out of their apartment into the narrow street, adjusting his backpack on his shoulder. The early sun cast long shadows between the tired buildings, their walls showing patches of repair and wear, much like his own uniform. Street vendors were already setting up their carts, their voices echoing off the close-set buildings. "Fresh bread! Get your fresh bread here!" called Mrs. Chen from her corner spot. She waved at Alex as he passed, her weathered face creasing into a kind smile. The smell of fresh bread mixed with the morning air, making his stomach rumble slightly. He walked carefully through the maze of alleyways, passing other early risers. Workers hurried past with lunchboxes tucked under their arms. Children in various school uniforms, some as worn as his own, made their way to different schools. The buildings around him leaned together like old friends, their windows displaying hanging laundry and small potted plants, signs of life and hope among the poverty. A group of younger students ran past him, their laughter bouncing off the walls. Despite the neighborhood's struggles, there was warmth here, the sense of community that survived in small greetings and shared hardships. Alex thought of his mother again, understanding that her strength helped build this warmth, one kind action at a time. At the small clinic, Alex's mother sat behind the reception desk, her gentle presence bringing calm to the busy waiting room. Her desk was organized neatly, patient files stacked in careful order beside the old computer. Though her uniform was faded from many washes, she wore it with quiet dignity. "Good morning, Mrs. Chan," she greeted an elderly woman who approached the desk. "How is your grandson doing?" Her voice carried genuine warmth despite the early hour and growing line of patients. The old woman smiled, touching her hand in grateful response. Throughout the morning, she handled each patient with the same care, helping confused elderly folks with their forms, calming anxious mothers with sick children, offering a kind word to those who looked worried. Even when the phone rang constantly and the line grew longer, her patience never wavered. "You're all always so kind," a nurse commented during a brief quiet moment, "even on the busiest days." "Small kindnesses matter," she replied softly, already turning to help the next patient. At evening, Alex sat at his desk, thinking about his mother's words to the nurse. He pulled out his notebook, its pages filled with his hopes and observations. Under the warm desk lamp, he wrote carefully, "Every kind action matters." The words seemed to glow on the page, carrying the weight of his mother's example. He thought about her gentle persistence at the clinic, how she treated each person as someone special. Her actions might seem small, a smile here, a helping hand there, but they changed people's days, made their worries lighter. Alex looked at his reflection in the window, seeing new determination in his eyes. His mother's daily kindness had taught him more than any textbook could. He understood now that helping others didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes, the smallest acts of kindness could start the biggest changes. "This is where it begins," he whispered to himself, adding another line in his notebook. "Start small, dream big." His hand was steady as he wrote, marking the beginning of something important, though he didn't yet know exactly what it would be. Alex walked home from school that afternoon, his mind filled with thoughts from the day's lessons. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the busy street. He noticed a well-dressed man walking ahead of him, looking slightly out of place in their neighborhood, with his expensive suit and polished shoes. Suddenly, the man stumbled. His briefcase fell from his hand, hitting the sidewalk with a dull thud. The man pressed one hand against a nearby wall, his other clutching at his chest. His face showed clear distress as he slowly sank to his knees. "Someone help!" a woman's voice called out. A small crowd began to gather, but no one stepped forward. They whispered among themselves, some pulling out phones to record, but none moving to assist. The man's breathing became more labored as he slumped against the wall. Alex noticed details others missed. The quality of the man's watch, his custom-made suit, the leather briefcase that had fallen open to reveal documents from a major corporation. This was Henry Edwards, the millionaire whose picture sometimes appeared in business news, but here, collapsed on a sidewalk in a poor neighborhood, he was just another person in need. "Please?" Henry managed to whisper, his face pale and sweating. People continued to stand back, uncertain and afraid. Some turned away, hurrying past as if to avoid involvement. Others just stared, their faces showing a mix of concern and hesitation. The expensive clothes that usually commanded respect now lay wrinkled and dusty on the concrete. Henry's status and wealth meant nothing in this moment of crisis. He was simply a human being struggling to breathe, while others watched helplessly from a distance. Alex felt his heart racing as he looked at the scene before him. The crowd continued to grow around Henry, their whispers filling the evening air. Some people held their phones, recording the scene instead of helping. Others pulled their children away, afraid of getting involved. The tension in the air was thick with fear and uncertainty. "Someone should call an ambulance," a woman said nervously, but her feet remained rooted to the spot. "What if we make it worse?" another voice worried from the crowd. "Better not touch him," an elderly man advised, shaking his head. "Could be dangerous." Alex watched as Henry's breathing became more labored. The man's expensive suit was now wrinkled and dusty, his face growing paler by the second. Despite his obvious wealth, in this moment he was just someone who needed help, someone like the patients Alex's mother assisted every day at the clinic. Something shifted in Alex's mind. He thought of his mother's words about kindness, about how every action mattered. His hands trembled slightly, but his voice was steady as he spoke. "Excuse me," Alex said quietly but firmly, moving through the crowd. People stepped back, surprised, to see a teenager in a patched school uniform taking charge. Some watched with curiosity, others with doubt. Alex knelt beside Henry, ignoring the whispers behind him. His heart was racing, but he remembered everything his mother had taught him about staying calm in emergencies. The man's eyes met his, filled with fear and gratitude. "Sir, I'm here to help," Alex said gently, placing a steady hand on Henry's shoulder. "Try to stay calm and breathe with me." The crowd fell silent, watching as this young boy showed more courage than all of them combined. In that moment, Alex wasn't thinking about the man's wealth or status. He wasn't thinking about the crowd or their phones. He was focused entirely on helping someone in need, just as his mother had taught him. Alex leaned close to Henry, carefully observing his breathing pattern. The man's chest rose and fell in quick, shallow movements. His face had taken on a bluish tint, and sweat beaded on his forehead. Alex recognized the signs of respiratory distress from his mother's teachings. "Sir, can you hear me?" Alex asked, clearly keeping his voice calm. Henry managed a slight nod, his eyes wide with fear. His fingers clutched at his chest, knuckles white with tension. "I'm going to help you sit up straighter. It will make breathing easier," Alex explained. He noticed Henry's tie was too tight and carefully loosened it. The expensive silk felt strange under his fingers, but he focused on the task at hand. Moving with gentle confidence, Alex supported Henry's shoulders. "Let's lean you back against the wall," he said softly. Try to relax your shoulders." Slowly, carefully, he helped Henry shift into a better position, making sure his back was straight against the wall. The crowd watched in silence as this young boy in his worn school uniform handled the situation with unexpected skill. Some began to lower their phones, drawn into the quiet intensity of the moment. "That's good," Alex encouraged, noticing Henry's breathing becoming slightly less labored. "Try to take slower breaths, like this." He demonstrated, breathing in and out steadily. Henry struggled to follow along, but his desperate gasping gradually began to slow. Alex kept one hand on Henry's shoulder, offering both support and comfort. He remembered his mother saying that touch could help calm someone in distress. The expensive fabric of Henry's suit was damp with sweat under Alex's palm, but he maintained his gentle grip, anchoring the frightened man to the moment. With his free hand, Alex pulled out his old phone. His fingers moved quickly but steadily as he dialed emergency services. The operator's voice came through clearly, professional and direct. Emergency services, what's your situation?" "A man is having trouble breathing on Mason Street near the corner store," Alex reported calmly. "He's conscious but showing signs of respiratory distress. His skin is pale and slightly bluish. He's about 55 years old." The operator asked for more details, and Alex provided them with careful precision. "We're at number 247 Mason Street. I've helped him into a sitting position against the wall. His breathing is rapid and shallow. He's clutching his chest." As he spoke, Alex kept his other hand steady on Henry's shoulder. The man's eyes remained fixed on him, still showing fear but now mixed with gratitude. Some people in the crowd nodded approvingly at the boy's clear, detailed responses. "The ambulance is on its way," Alex told Henry softly after ending the call. "Just focus on breathing slowly." He noticed Henry's hand trembling as it gripped his suit jacket. "Don't worry, sir. I'll stay right here with you until they arrive." A police siren sounded in the distance, and Henry's body tensed. "Easy now," Alex soothed, his voice gentle but firm. "Help is coming. You're not alone." He demonstrated slow breathing again, encouraging Henry to match his rhythm. The evening light was fading, casting long shadows on the sidewalk. Alex shifted slightly to block the glare from Henry's eyes, maintaining his calm presence. "My mom's a nurse," he said softly. "She taught me that staying calm helps everything else fall into place. Just keep breathing with me." The ambulance arrived with flashing lights and urgent sirens cutting through the evening quiet. Paramedics moved quickly, their practiced movements showing years of experience. They took over from Alex, asking him questions about what he'd observed while checking Henry's vital signs. "You did well, young man," one paramedic said, nodding approvingly as they prepared to move Henry onto a stretcher. "Your quick action made a real difference." The crowd had grown larger, and now people whispered with admiration. "Did you see how calm he stayed?" a woman murmured. "And he's just a boy." Others nodded, some looking slightly ashamed at their own hesitation earlier. As the paramedics lifted Henry into the ambulance, the businessman reached out weakly and caught Alex's hand. "Thank you," he whispered, his eyes conveying what his breathless voice couldn't fully express. Alex squeezed his hand gently, before stepping back to let the paramedics close the doors. The ambulance pulled away, its sirens fading into the distance. People from the crowd approached Alex, offering praise and patting his shoulder. "That was brave," someone said. "Where did you learn to handle an emergency like that?" Alex felt his cheeks warm at the attention. He picked up his backpack from where he'd dropped it earlier, brushing off some dust. "Anyone would have done the same," he said quietly, though he knew that wasn't exactly true. "My mom taught me what to do in emergencies. She's a nurse." Walking home through the darkening streets, Alex thought about what had happened. His hands were still slightly shaky, but his heart felt steady. "I just did what needed to be done," he whispered to himself. What Mom would have done. The simple truth of it settled around him like a comfortable blanket. 1 week later, A knock at the apartment door surprised Alex and his mother during dinner. When Alex opened it, he found Henry standing there, looking much healthier than their last encounter. The businessman wore a well-tailored suit, but his posture was humble, his eyes warm with gratitude. "Good evening," Henry said softly, holding a wrapped package in an envelope. "I hope I'm not interrupting." He looked around the modest apartment with genuine interest rather than judgment, noting the carefully maintained furniture and clean surfaces. Alex's mother quickly stood up, wiping her hands on her apron. "Please, come in," she offered, though her voice held a note of surprise. Henry stepped inside, his tall frame making the small room seem even smaller. "I needed to thank you properly, Alex," Henry said, turning to face the boy. "The doctors told me what would have happened if you hadn't helped when you did." His voice trembled slightly as he added, "You saved my life." Alex shifted uncomfortably under the praise, but Henry continued, "I was having a heart attack. Without your quick action and calm presence..." He held out the package and envelope. "These are for you, though nothing could really repay what you did." The package was wrapped in simple blue paper, tied with a silver ribbon. The envelope looked thick, clearly containing more than just a thank you note. "Sir, Alex started, but Henry raised his hand gently. "Please," he said quietly, "let me do this small thing. You showed extraordinary courage that day. You saw past everything else and simply helped another human being in need. That's rare, Alex. More rare than you might think." Alex looked at the envelope and package in Henry's outstretched hands. His eyes moved to his mother, who stood quietly watching, then back to Henry's earnest face. Something felt important about this moment, about the choice he would make. "Sir," Alex said softly but firmly, "I appreciate your kindness, but I can't accept the money." He gestured gently at the envelope. "I didn't help you that day, hoping for a reward." Henry's eyebrows rose slightly, but Alex continued, his voice steady. "When I saw you needed help, I just thought about what was right, what my mom taught me about helping others. It wasn't about who you were or what you could give." His mother's smile grew warmer, pride shining in her eyes. She watched her son standing tall in his patched uniform, choosing principles over profit, her hands clasped together quietly, holding back tears of joy. "That day," Alex explained, "I just saw someone who needed help, like the patients my mom helps at the clinic every day. They can't offer rewards, but that doesn't matter. What matters is doing what's right." The small apartment seemed to grow warmer with these words. Even the worn furniture and simple decorations seemed to glow with a kind of dignity. Henry looked around, seeing the modest surroundings with new understanding. "My mom always says that kindness isn't a business transaction," Alex added softly. "It's just what makes us human." He glanced at his mother, drawing strength from her proud smile, from the years she'd spent teaching him these values through her own actions. His mother stepped forward, placing a gentle hand on his shoulder. No words were needed. Her touch said everything about her pride in the young man her son had become. Henry stood quietly for a moment, studying Alex with newfound respect. Then he placed the envelope and package on the small dining table, his movements deliberate and careful. "Your response makes me even more certain about what I want to propose," Henry said, his voice warm but serious. "This isn't payment for what you did. It's an investment in what you could do." He pulled out a chair and sat down, inviting Alex and his mother to join him. "I'd like to offer you a scholarship," he continued. "Not just money, but a chance to study medicine, if that's what you'd like." Alex's eyes widened slightly, but Henry wasn't finished. "I have a personal physician, Dr. Collins. He's not just a doctor. He's an excellent teacher. He's agreed to mentor you, help you with your studies." "Bet, sir?" Alex began, his voice uncertain. His mother touched his arm gently, encouraging him to listen. "This isn't charity, Alex," Henry explained softly. "You showed remarkable instincts that day. The way you stayed calm, how you knew exactly what to do. Those qualities can't be bought. They have to come from within." He leaned forward slightly, his eyes sincere. "Think of all the people you could help with proper training. Dr. Collins could help you overcome any academic challenges, prepare you for medical school if that's your dream." Alex looked at his mother, seeing hope mix with pride in her eyes. She nodded slightly, understanding this wasn't just about money. It was about opportunity, about expanding the reach of her son's natural compassion. "Your kindness saved my life," Henry said quietly. "Let me help you save others." The community medical school stood tall and imposing on Alex's first day. He clutched his second-hand textbooks close to his chest, his patched uniform standing out among the newer ones worn by other students. The hallways echoed with voices and footsteps as he searched for his classroom, trying to calm his racing heart. Inside the classroom, Alex chose a seat near the back, hoping to blend in. The instructor's voice filled the room, using terms that seemed to float past him like strange birds. He wrote frantically in his notebook, trying to capture every word, but understanding seemed to slip through his fingers. "Can anyone explain the basic principles we just covered?" the instructor asked. Alex sank lower in his seat as other students raised their hands confidently. Their answers came quickly, filled with medical terminology that made his head spin. During break time, he overheard whispers from a group nearby. "How did he get in here?" one student muttered. "His uniform's from the poor district," another added. "Probably some charity case." Alex pretended not to hear, focusing instead on reviewing his notes. The days that followed brought more challenges. Each lecture seemed to build on concepts Alex struggled to grasp. He stayed up late studying, his small desk lamp casting shadows across pages of complicated diagrams and unfamiliar words. Sometimes his vision blurred from exhaustion, but he refused to stop. In anatomy class, other students moved confidently through their assignments. Their hands steady, their answers sure. Alex's own hands trembled slightly as he tried to identify the parts they were studying. The instructor's voice grew distant as anxiety tightened his chest. "You seem lost," a classmate commented, not unkindly. "Maybe this program is too advanced for some people." The words stung, but Alex kept his expression neutral, remembering his mother's quiet dignity in difficult moments. At lunch, Alex sat alone, spreading his books across the table. While others chatted and laughed, he mouthed medical terms to himself, trying to make them feel less foreign on his tongue. His simple, packed lunch sat half forgotten as he struggled with his notes. "Remember why you're here," he whispered to himself, thinking of Henry and that crucial moment on the street. His fingers traced the words in his textbook, willing them to make sense. The afternoon sun streamed through the windows, warming his worn uniform as he continued his solitary study. Each evening, Alex returned home exhausted but determined. His mother noticed the dark circles under his eyes, but said nothing, simply placing a supportive hand on his shoulder as she passed his study corner. The weight of doubt and difficulty pressed against him, but underneath, a small flame of determination continued to burn. Dr. Collins's study felt warm and welcoming, unlike the intimidating classrooms at school. He sat across from Alex, examining the boy's worn textbooks and scattered notes. His kind eyes noticed Alex's tense shoulders and tired expression. "Let's try something different," Dr. Collins suggested, taking out a clean sheet of paper. "Instead of tackling everything at once, we'll break it down." He drew simple diagrams, dividing complex topics into smaller, manageable pieces. "See this chapter on the circulatory system." He pointed to Alex's textbook. "Think of it like your neighborhood. The main arteries are like the big streets you walk every day. The smaller blood vessels are like the alleyways between houses. Alex's eyes brightened with understanding. So the heart is like the central square where all the streets meet? Exactly, Dr. Collins smiled warmly. You already know these patterns from your daily life. Medicine isn't so different, it's about understanding how things connect. During their sessions, the doctor noticed when Alex's attention began to waver. Time for a break, he would say firmly. Even doctors need to rest their minds. He taught Alex to recognize signs of mental fatigue and how to take effective short breaks. Close your eyes for a minute, he instructed. Think about something peaceful. Maybe your mother's smile or a quiet morning. Alex followed his guidance, feeling the tension slowly leave his shoulders. They developed a routine of studying in focused bursts with brief rest periods in between. Dr. Collins showed Alex how to organize his notes using colors and simple drawings, making complex information easier to remember. Medicine isn't a race, the doctor reminded him gently. It's a journey of understanding. Some days you'll move quickly, others slowly. Both are fine as long as you keep moving forward. Through these sessions, Alex began to see his studies differently. The overwhelming mountain of information became a series of small, climbable hills. His notebook transformed from a jumble of confusing terms into clear, organized pathways of knowledge. You have good instincts, Dr. Collins observed one afternoon. You just needed someone to help you find the right path to learning. The practical exam room felt colder than usual that morning. Alex stood before the examination table, medical instruments laid out neatly before him. His hands trembled slightly as he tried to demonstrate the proper technique for checking vital signs. The instructor watched silently, making notes on her clipboard. Next, I'll check the... Alex's voice faltered. His mind went blank, forgetting the sequence Dr. Collins had carefully taught him. The stethoscope felt heavy and awkward in his hands. He placed it incorrectly, then fumbled trying to correct his mistake. That's enough, the instructor said quietly. Her face showed no emotion as she made final notes. You can review your results tomorrow. Alex knew from her tone that he had failed. Walking home, the weight of failure pressed down on his shoulders. The sunny afternoon seemed to mock his dark mood. He clutched his bag tightly, fighting back tears. Other students passed by, chatting about their successful exams, their voices fading as he quickened his pace. At home, Alex sat at his small desk, staring at his carefully organized notes. All those hours of study, Dr. Collins's patient teaching, Henry's faith in him, it felt wasted now. He pushed the books away, his throat tight with disappointment. I can't do this, he whispered to himself. Maybe they were right about me. His mother found him like that, shoulders slumped, defeat written across his face. She set down her nursing bag and pulled up a chair beside him. Tell me, what happened? She said softly. Alex's voice shook as he described the exam, each mistake feeling heavier as he spoke. I let everyone down, he finished. Maybe I should just quit. His mother was quiet for a moment, then took his hand gently. Remember the day you helped Mr. Henry? She asked. When everyone else stepped back, you stepped forward. That wasn't about medical knowledge. That was courage. But this is different, Alex protested. I failed. No, she said firmly. You stumbled. There's a difference. You've already done something extraordinary. You saw someone in need and knew how to help. That's the heart of medicine, Alex. The rest is just learning the tools. She squeezed his hand. You're stronger than one failed exam. You've already proven that. Don't let this stop you from becoming who you're meant to be. The morning after his mother's encouragement, Alex woke up early and revealed his failed exam notes. Instead of seeing only mistakes, he began to understand where he had gone wrong. Each error became a lesson, a stepping stone toward improvement. In Dr. Collins's study, Alex practiced the vital signs check again and again. His hands grew steadier with each attempt. "Notice how you're moving more naturally now," Dr. Collins observed. "You're not just memorizing steps, you're understanding why each movement matters." During class, Alex started asking questions when things weren't clear. His voice, once hesitant, grew stronger. Even the students who had doubted him began to notice the change. One day, after he correctly answered a particularly difficult question, he caught approving nods from his classmates. "Your progress is remarkable," his instructor commented after class one day. "You've developed a thorough understanding of the material." Alex smiled, remembering the days when medical terms had seemed like a foreign language. In practical sessions, his movements became precise and confident. He could now explain procedures while performing them, his voice steady and clear. The same instructor who had failed him weeks ago now used his demonstrations as examples for others. "See how Alex positions the stethoscope?" she would say. "That's exactly the technique we're looking for." Each word of praise built his confidence, but Alex remained humble, remembering his earlier struggles. During lunch breaks, he noticed other students starting to sit with him. Some even asked for his help with difficult concepts. "You explain things in a way that makes sense," one classmate admitted, "maybe because you had to work so hard to understand it yourself." Dr. Collins beamed with pride during their sessions. "You've done more than just improve," he said. "You've discovered your own way of learning and helping others learn too." At home, Alex's mother noticed the change in his posture, the quiet confidence in his movements. His test papers now carried high marks, but more importantly, they showed deep understanding. When he explained medical concepts to her, his eyes lit up with genuine enthusiasm. The same determination that had driven him to help Henry now fueled his studies. Each small success built upon the last, like building blocks creating a strong foundation. Alex had transformed from the uncertain student at the back of the class into someone others looked to for guidance and inspiration. The local hospital corridors buzzed with activity as Alex reported for his first day. The white walls and antiseptic smell felt both familiar and intimidating. His new uniform was crisp and clean, different from his old patched school clothes but carrying the same sense of purpose. "You'll be assisting in general care," the head nurse explained, leading him through busy hallways. "Watch, learn, and ask questions when appropriate." Her brisk tone softened as she added, "Everyone starts somewhere." Each day brought new challenges. Alex rushed between patients, helping with basic care needs while trying to absorb everything around him. Experienced nurses moved with practiced efficiency, their actions smooth and purposeful. He watched carefully, noting how they spoke to patients, their gentle way of handling difficult situations. "Could you help me with this patient?" a nurse called out during a particularly hectic morning. Alex hurried over, watching how she changed bandages with gentle precision. "Always talk to them while you work," she explained quietly. "It helps them feel comfortable." The days were long and often exhausting. Sometimes Alex's feet ached from hours of walking, his mind swimming with new information. But he never complained, instead taking mental notes of everything he observed. He learned to read the subtle signs of patient discomfort, to anticipate needs before they were voiced. "You have good instincts," an elderly nurse commented one afternoon, watching him calm an anxious patient. "But remember to pace yourself. This work requires stamina." During lunch breaks, Alex sat with other staff members, listening to their stories and experiences. Each conversation taught him something new: tricks for making patients more comfortable, ways to handle emergency situations, the importance of staying calm under pressure. The hospital became a second classroom, one where textbook knowledge met real-world application. Every day brought new lessons, each patient interaction adding to his growing understanding of what it meant to care for others. The emergency room doors burst open on a quiet afternoon. A mother rushed in, carrying a small boy whose face had turned alarmingly blue. Her eyes were wide with panic as she called out, "Help! He can't breathe!" Alex was nearby, restocking supplies when he heard the commotion. The boy, no more than 7, clutched his throat while his mother held him tightly. Other parents in the waiting room watched in horror, some pulling their own children closer. "What happened?" the emergency nurse asked quickly, taking the boy from his mother's arms. "He was eating candy," the mother sobbed. "And then he started choking. I didn't know what to do. I just brought him here." The medical team worked swiftly, their trained movements a blur of efficiency. Alex watched as they performed the Heimlich maneuver, successfully dislodging the candy. The boy's color slowly returned to normal as he took shaky breaths. Later, after things had calmed down, Alex sat in the break room, his untouched coffee growing cold. He couldn't stop thinking about the fear in the mother's eyes, her helplessness in those crucial moments. 5 minutes, he whispered to himself. It took 5 minutes to get here, but in an emergency, every second counts. He remembered his own training, how simple the Heimlich maneuver was once you knew the technique. If the mother had known these basic steps, the situation might never have become so dire. The boy wouldn't have turned blue, wouldn't have experienced such terror. A senior nurse found him still lost in thought. "Tough case?" she asked gently. "Didn't have to be," Alex replied, his voice quiet but intense. If people knew basic first aid, if they knew what to do in those first critical moments. He thought about his own neighborhood, about all the parents and children who might face similar emergencies. How many others felt that same helplessness, that same panic when seconds mattered most? "There has to be a way," he said, more to himself than the nurse. "A way to teach people these life-saving skills before they need them." That night, Alex sat at his familiar desk, the small lamp casting its warm glow. He opened his old notebook, the one with "Small Actions, Big Changes" written on the cover. His pen hovered over a fresh page as thoughts from the day's emergencies swirled in his mind. Slowly, carefully, he wrote, "First Aid Education for Children." The words seemed to glow on the page, filling him with purpose. Below, he started listing ideas, his handwriting growing more excited with each line. He thought about his own neighborhood, about the children playing in narrow streets far from hospitals. Many of their families, like his own, couldn't afford private medical care, but knowledge, that could be shared freely. "Start with the basics," he wrote. "Choking response, breathing checks, calling for help." He pictured teaching these skills to kids his mother's patients, to the children who played near his apartment. They could learn, just as he had learned. They could be ready when emergencies struck. Looking up at the family photos on his wall, Alex smiled. This wasn't just about teaching first aid, it was about empowering his community, giving them tools to help each other. The kitchen smelled of warm soup as Alex sat with his mother after her evening shift. His notebook lay open between them on the small table, pages filled with his plans. The soft evening light filtered through their window, making the moment feel intimate and important. "Mom, I want to teach first aid to kids in our neighborhood," Alex began, his voice both excited and nervous. He explained about the choking incident at the hospital, about his realization that knowledge could save lives. His mother listened quietly, stirring her soup. Her tired eyes grew brighter as Alex shared his ideas for simple lessons, demonstrations, and practice sessions. "You see, if children learn these skills early," Alex continued, "they could help in emergencies, just like I helped Mr. Henry." His mother reached across the table and took his hand. "This," she said softly, her voice full of pride, "this is how you can change our community." She smiled, remembering her own years of teaching Alex basic medical care. Sometimes, the biggest changes start with the smallest actions. Alex squeezed his mother's hand, feeling her support warm his heart. The kitchen's dim light seemed to glow a little brighter, reflecting the hope in both their eyes. Henry's office was warm and welcoming, so different from the day Alex had helped him on the street. Sunlight streamed through large windows as Alex presented his idea, his worn notebook open on the polished desk. First aid education for children? Henry leaned forward, interested. Tell me more. Alex explained about the choking incident, his voice growing stronger with passion. If that mother had known basic first aid, her son wouldn't have been in such danger. Every child, every parent in our neighborhood should have these skills. Henry listened intently, nodding as Alex described his plans for simple practical lessons. The businessman's eyes showed understanding, remembering his own moment of helplessness on the sidewalk. You saved my life because you had this knowledge, Henry said quietly. Now you want to pass it on. He smiled, reaching for his phone. I'm not just going to fund this program, Alex. I'm going to help make it bigger. Over the next hour, Henry made calls to hospital administrators and school principals he knew. His voice carried authority and enthusiasm as he explained Alex's project. This young man has a vision that could save lives, he told them. Dr. Collins can help develop the training materials, Henry suggested, writing notes. And I know several schools that would welcome this program. He paused, looking at Alex with warmth. You've thought about teaching others to help people. Let me help you reach more people than you imagined. Alex sat quietly, watching his small idea grow into something larger. His simple notebook sketches were becoming real possibilities. Henry's support wasn't just financial, it was opening doors Alex hadn't known existed. Thank you, Alex said softly. This means everything. No, Henry replied. You're the one giving something precious to our community. I'm just helping it grow. Late into the night, Alex worked on his lesson plans, making colorful diagrams and simple instructions. He remembered how Dr. Collins had taught him, breaking complex ideas into simple steps. His notebook filled with drawings and clear explanations that children could understand. The elementary school classroom buzzed with excitement on the first day. 20 eager faces looked up at Alex, their eyes wide with curiosity. Posters showing basic first aid steps decorated the walls, making the room feel friendly and inviting. Today we're going to learn how to be heroes, Alex began, smiling at the children. Sometimes heroes don't wear capes, they just know what to do when someone needs help. He demonstrated the Heimlich maneuver using a small dummy, making the children laugh when he named it Mr. Huggles. Their giggles turned to focused attention as they practiced the moves themselves, their small hands finding the right positions. Remember, Alex explained, moving among them, gentle but firm, like giving a bear hug to help someone breathe. The children nodded, seriously, repeating the motion until they got it right. A little girl named Sarah raised her hand excitedly. My baby brother sometimes chokes on his food, she said. Now I can show Mama what to do. Her eyes shone with pride as she demonstrated the technique perfectly. Other children gathered around practice dummies, taking turns and helping each other. They checked breathing, practiced rescue positions, and learned when to call for help. Their small voices filled the room with determined counting as they practiced chest compressions. This is better than superhero movies, one boy declared, carefully adjusting his classmate's hand position. Because we can really save people. At the end of the session, a quiet boy tugged at Alex's sleeve. Mr. Alex, he said softly, I'm going to teach my mom and big brother everything when I get home. Then we can all help people together. Alex watched them leave, chattering excitedly about what they'd learned. Their enthusiasm reminded him of himself at their age, learning first aid from his mother. Now the circle was complete. He was passing on knowledge that could save lives, one child at a time. As Alex's first aid program gained attention, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. Some parents crossed their arms and shook their heads during community meetings. They questioned whether children could really handle emergency situations. "These are serious matters for professionals," one father said firmly. "Children might do more harm than good." Alex felt the weight of their doubt but remained calm. He remembered how he had helped Henry that day on the street. Instead of arguing, he decided to show them real examples. At the next community gathering, he invited Sarah, a 10-year-old girl who had helped her younger brother during a choking incident. She stood quietly but confidently before the adults. "I remembered what Alex taught us," Sarah explained, her voice clear and steady. "My brother was choking on a piece of candy. I knew exactly what to do." Her mother stood beside her, nodding with tears in her eyes. "My daughter saved her brother because of this program." One by one, Alex shared more stories, children who had helped during accidents at home, at school, or in the neighborhood. He showed videos of his students practicing CPR correctly, demonstrating their serious approach to learning. The doubting faces began to soften. Even the father who had spoken against the program earlier watched with growing interest. "These children aren't just playing," Alex explained gently. "They're learning to save lives, just like I did. Sometimes the smallest hands can make the biggest difference." Alex's first aid program began to flourish in ways he hadn't imagined. Each morning, more parents arrived at the community center, asking to enroll their children. The small classroom that once felt too big now barely contained all the eager young faces. Alex watched with quiet joy as children filled every available seat, their notebooks open and eyes bright with curiosity. "My friend told me how her daughter helped when Grandpa felt dizzy," one mother explained while registering her son. "I want my boy to learn these skills too." Her words echoed the growing sentiment in the community. Parents began to see the program not as a burden, but as an essential life skill for their children. The success stories started flowing in like a gentle stream. A 12-year-old girl had helped her neighbor who had fallen on the stairs. Two brothers had known exactly what to do when their friend got a severe nosebleed during soccer practice. Each story spread through the neighborhood, bringing more families to Alex's door. During one afternoon session, Alex noticed a small boy sitting in the front row, paying extraordinary attention. "My sister used what she learned here last week," he told Alex after class, his voice filled with pride. "She knew how to help me when I was choking on a piece of apple. Now, I want to learn everything too." The local newspaper even featured a story about a 9-year-old student who had helped at a car accident scene. She had remembered Alex's lessons about keeping calm and calling emergency services immediately. The paramedics had praised her quick thinking and correct actions. Alex kept a small notebook where he recorded these successes. Each evening he would write down the day's events, adding another story to his growing collection. "Today," he wrote one night, 3 more families joined our program. The children aren't just learning, they're becoming everyday heroes in their own homes." He smiled, remembering how it all started with one simple act of helping Henry on the street. News of Alex's program spread beyond their small neighborhood like ripples in a pond. Other communities began reaching out, asking how they could start similar programs. Alex found himself visiting different parts of the city, speaking to eager groups of parents and children. Each new location brought fresh enthusiasm and hope. One morning, Alex received an unexpected email from a major hospital in the city. "Your program has caught our attention," the hospital director wrote. "We'd like to discuss implementing it across all our community outreach centers." Similar messages followed from schools, youth organizations, and health clinics. Each saw the value in teaching children these life-saving skills. During a community meeting, Alex noticed how differently people spoke about first aid now. "My daughter taught her whole class what to do if someone faints," a teacher shared proudly. The children aren't afraid anymore. They know they can help. Parents nodded in agreement, remembering their own initial doubts. The local fire department offered to provide additional training support. "What you've started here matters," the fire chief told Alex. "These kids are becoming our first line of defense in emergencies." They arranged for firefighters to visit the classes, adding their expertise to the program. Alex watched as bulletin boards throughout the neighborhood filled with posters about first aid awareness. Corner stores displayed emergency contact numbers more prominently. Even the ice cream shop owner had taken a first aid course after seeing how confidently the children handled minor emergencies. "It's not just about learning CPR or bandaging wounds," Alex explained to a group of visiting educators. "It's about building a community where everyone knows they can make a difference." He looked around at the faces in the room, seeing the same understanding dawn in their eyes that he had felt that day with Henry. First aid wasn't just a skill anymore. It had become a bridge connecting people, building confidence, and saving lives.
The community center buzzed with excitement on the day of the first aid program's anniversary celebration. Colorful banners hung from the walls, and children in neat uniforms demonstrated their skills at different stations. Alex stood near the entrance, greeting guests when he saw Henry walking in, looking healthier and more energetic than ever. Henry paused to watch a young girl confidently showing proper CPR technique to a group of observers. His eyes sparkled with pride and amazement. "I remember when you helped me that day on the street," he said softly to Alex. "I never imagined that one moment would lead to all this." The room fell quiet as Henry took the podium. He looked across the sea of faces, children, parents, teachers, and medical professionals, all gathered because of one young man's vision. "When Alex found me that day," Henry began, his voice warm and clear, "he didn't just save my life. He showed us all what courage really means." Henry turned to face Alex directly. "You've taken that single act of bravery and transformed it into something extraordinary. Look around. Every child in this room now has the power to save lives. You've changed our entire community, one lesson at a time." Alex felt his eyes grow moist as he looked at the faces of his students, seeing in them the same determination he had felt that day with Henry. Sometimes the biggest changes started with the smallest acts of kindness. After Henry's speech, Alex stepped up to the podium, his heart full of emotion. He looked at the faces before him, children he had taught, parents who had trusted him, and community members who had supported his vision. The afternoon light streamed through the windows, illuminating the determined faces of his young students. "When I first helped someone in need," Alex began softly, "I was just a boy who remembered what his mother taught him. Today, I see hundreds of children who can do the same." He paused, watching as his students straightened their backs with pride. Learning to save lives isn't just about medical skills. It's about believing that each of us, no matter how young, can change the world. As if on cue, groups of children moved to their designated areas. 10-year-old Sarah demonstrated the recovery position with perfect technique. Nearby, Michael showed the correct way to handle a choking emergency. Each child moved with confidence, their actions precise and purposeful. Parents watched in amazement as their children transformed into capable first responders. A mother stood up from the audience, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "Last month, my daughter Lisa found her little brother unconscious after a fall," she shared. She didn't panic. She remembered everything she learned here. The paramedic said her quick response prevented serious complications. Lisa, a small girl with braided hair, smiled shyly as people turned to look at her. Around the room, other parents nodded, some wiping away tears. These weren't just demonstrations anymore. They were proof that children could become heroes in their own homes. Alex watched as his students continued their presentations, each movement showing the careful practice and dedication they had put into learning these life-saving skills. "Remember," Alex concluded, his voice gentle but firm, "every life saved creates ripples of change. Today, we aren't just learning first aid. We're building a community where everyone has the power to help others. After the success of the community program, Alex sat at his old desk one evening, spreading out maps and documents. His vision had grown beyond their small neighborhood. The lamp cast a warm glow over plans for a national first aid education initiative. He thought about all the children across the country who could learn these life-saving skills. Henry visited regularly now, bringing news of interested hospitals and schools from different cities. The Children's Hospital in Boston wants to implement your program, he announced during one meeting. They see the potential in teaching young people these skills. Alex nodded, carefully adding another pin to the map on his wall. Together, they developed partnerships with major medical centers. Alex's simple teaching methods were adapted for different age groups and communities. We need to keep it accessible, he insisted during a meeting with hospital administrators. Every child should feel capable of learning these skills, just like my first students did. Schools began incorporating the program into their curriculum. Alex traveled to different cities, training teachers and medical staff. In each location, he saw the same spark of understanding in children's eyes that he had witnessed in his first classroom. During one training session, a principal remarked, "It's amazing how quickly the children grasp these concepts when they're taught with such care." Henry handled the business aspects, ensuring the program remained free for underprivileged communities. "This is your legacy," he told Alex one afternoon. "You're not just teaching first aid anymore. You're changing how people think about children's capabilities." Alex smiled, remembering his own doubts when he first helped Henry on the street. The program grew steadily, but Alex insisted on maintaining its core values. Each new location received the same careful attention he had given his first class. "We're not just expanding," he explained to his team. "We're building a network of young heroes who can help their communities, one skill at a time." In a vast auditorium at the National Youth First Aid Convention, Alex stood quietly at center stage, taking in the remarkable scene before him. Hundreds of children in neat uniforms filled the room, all focused intently on their first aid practice. The sound of their concentrated effort created a gentle hum throughout the space. Light streamed through tall windows, illuminating young faces bent over CPR dummies and bandaging exercises. Some practiced rescue breathing, while others demonstrated the recovery position. Each child moved with purpose and confidence, just as Alex had once hoped they would. In his hand, he held his old notebook, its pages worn from years of use. He opened it carefully to the first page, where his younger self had written in uncertain handwriting, "Han dong no, fei dui lon." Small actions, big changes. Running his fingers over these faded words, Alex remembered that day on the street with Henry, how one simple decision had started it all. A young girl in the front row caught his attention. She was showing a younger student how to check for breathing, her movements gentle but precise. Just like Alex taught us, she explained softly, "We need to be both careful and confident." Her words echoed his own teachings from years ago. His mother, sitting in the front row, caught his eye and smiled. She had witnessed his journey from a hesitant boy to the leader he had become. Henry stood beside her, nodding with pride at what they had accomplished together. Alex looked down at his notebook one more time, then back at the sea of young faces before him. Each child represented a potential hero ready to help others in need. The simple message he had written years ago had become a living reality, proof that sometimes the smallest actions could indeed create the biggest changes. A single moment of courage on a busy street didn't just save one life. It transformed an entire community. Alex's story proves that heroes come in all ages and that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest acts of kindness. Have you ever witnessed or performed an act of everyday heroism? Share your story in the comments below and subscribe for more tales of ordinary people doing extraordinary things.